Okay, here we go. We have an animated movie that was directed by a man from Latvia and co-written by another one from Latvia, Gintz and Matisse. And this is a movie that I think it's already won an award. I think the first award show, huge award show of the year, is the Golden Globes, and this has already won the best award for the best animated movie. It's a great mind watcher for us because we're going to pair it with a lot of words from Jesus, and the movie itself. The main characters are a cat, which is named Cat. There are no character names in this, so it's just a group of animals. A cat, a dog, a lemur, a capybara, a large white secretary bird, another large secretary birds, and a huge whale shark. And there's a lot of symbology in this, but as I was praying, this movie, this is our third pretty interesting movie we're having here in a row. And when I was praying about this, I started thinking about the ultimate goal of our lives, which Jesus says he says it in terms of a teacher of God, and he says it in terms of a miracle worker in A Course in Miracles. He says the sole responsibility of the teacher of God, and then a different point of a miracle worker, is to accept the atonement for himself. So even though it's called A Course in Miracles, and our life is to be dedicated to letting our minds and hearts be used in a miraculous way, ultimately it does come down to the simplicity of one sole responsibility. So that means that no matter what you're thinking about, you can always just come back to this, because this is the goal that has been set for us, is to accept the atonement, and that's it. And nothing else matters other than this one thing. And as we go deeper into that and talk a little bit about the atonement, we will start to realize that it's the escape from time, from linear time. And on the way over, I was praying on that again, and I was thinking, I said, well, what's the simple way to say it for what atonement is? And he was saying, well, it's just the realization that the past and the future are absolutely identical. They are the same. They have absolutely no difference. They're absolutely identical. And if you really open up to that, you can start to see, that would take care of guilt, shame, pain, worry, anxiety. Ambition would be gone. If the past is the same, identical as the future, then there would be no need to look to a future for anything. And that's the sameness we talked about, where Jesus said at the last section, Christmas is the end of sacrifice, in chapter 15. Make this year different by making it all the same. He's really just saying your escape, your healing, salvation of the world and your mind and everything all boils down to just seeing that the past and the future are identical. That also collapses all stories. There wouldn't be a single story, because there would be no progression of events. All stories are, and movies are, past, present, future. And that's an artificial construct that really is a defense against the holy instant. So when I was looking at some ideas, I'll start off with a few ideas, and then as we go through the movie and pause, I'll bring in some more. But some of these you've heard, but I think they work very well with mind watching, and that's really what the goal of this is being able to watch your mind because the director, his name is Gintz, his first name is Gintz, he basically has put together an animated movie with no words, no dialogue, and no names of characters or anything, but he's just wanting to take something that starts to examine universal fears, because he made the movie to discover his own fears and transcend his own fears. So that's the purpose for making the movie, and that's actually the purpose we're watching the movie for. So the same purpose is still there for the making of it and for the watching of it. And Jesus is really going to teach us that as we look more closely at the definition of the atonement, atonement is the awareness that the separation never happened. So this is why it is way beyond any definition in the world of forgiveness, because the world is always forgiving something that happened. And true forgiveness has absolutely nothing with forgiving what happened. So we could say that the world's definition of forgiveness is completely off. So everything we were raised with, trying to learn to follow what Jesus says, forgive and be forgiven, to follow the direction of Jesus, everything's been wrong. And the Course is basically, Jesus is teaching, you have to forgive your brother, you have to forgive your sister for what they did not do. Meaning, you have a perceptual hallucination going on of something that's happening, and it seems to be happening, and to be told that it's not happening seems to be what the world would call denial. I didn't do that, I didn't say that, it never happened. Whether it's the Holocaust never happened, or global warming never happened, or, it gets used a lot in terms of denial. But what Jesus is saying is, actually, he does talk about this in Lesson 132, that it's just what you think is what the world seems to be. And then he says in that lesson, there is no world, period. So it's so different from all the goals that are part of the world, because the goals of the world always involve improvement or reconciliation, or rebuilding, restoring. All these things have nothing to do with the goal of forgiveness. You could say that it is a restoration of the mind to its pristine state, but that pristine state has nothing to do with time. In that pristine state there is a flow, but this is the flow of spirit that is ever extending. It's what creation is. It's a return or a remembrance to creation, which is the only flow that there is. There really is no flow of events, because it can seem that way when you're in the miracle, like it's just everything feels very flowy, like you feel like you're just carried and everything is flowing so smoothly. But that's still a linear progression, and that is the error, linear progression, because there are no past, present, future events. So the sequencing of events in time is part of the defense against the holy instant. So that's why we are going so deep towards the atonement. It also has to do with the definition of creation, because in the Course Jesus says, mind reaches to itself, it does not go out. Within itself is everything, you within it and it within you. There is nothing else anywhere or ever. Those words are, I think even Rumi would go, man alive, what's that? It's like, he'd be like, God. Even Rumi would be, because it's, what does that mean? Mind reaches to itself, it does not go out. It's just this all-encompassing state of what reality is, of spirit. Divine mind is what it is. It just extends forever and ever and ever. It flows forever and ever and ever, but without any break or interruption. So imagine if we start to just look at, like, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm upset because I see something that's not there, that's starting to point out that I'm hallucinating. I'm always seeing the past, I'm perceiving the past, and even though I break it up in the mind into past and future, it's still only the past. That's why the psychics can predict the future, because they're really reading the past, so it's not so spectacular. It's the Akashic records. They're just reading from the Akashic records. They're reading from the script as written. But if you start to realize, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm upset because I see something that's not there. I see only the past. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. It must mean that there isn't one who is interpreting what is happening, because what seems to be happening is itself an interpretation, and it is an egoic interpretation. So perception and interpretation are not separate. There is no awareness. A lot of times in spirituality, people talk about being aware of what's happening. And Jesus is like saying, no, you can't even make a distinction between awareness and what's happening, because what seems to be happening is an interpretation. Whatever it is. It's a sunny day, it's a rainy day. Interpretation. An election of a president or presidents. It could be anything. It could be anything you can imagine. An atom moving, a molecule moving. Anything that is being perceived is an interpretation. And also, it's a wrong-minded interpretation if it's a thing or an object or a person, place, an event, a circumstance. If it's anything specific, it is an interpretation, and it's a wrong-minded interpretation. And there's only one interpretation that will set the mind free, and that's the Holy Spirit's interpretation, or the Atonement. There's only one escape from time. And as much as it may seem to be about, we get excited about mystery schools and strawberry and this and this, Jesus is like, well, yeah, good. And the purpose is to escape time, not to reinforce it. The purpose is to see the impossibility of wrong-minded perception and wrong-minded interpretations. So it's not like the problem is that people are condemning other people and people are judging other people, but the very idea of specifics, a person, a place, a thing, a cat, a lemur, a dog, a story, all of it is wrong-minded perception, and none of it leads into ecstasy or joy or eternal life. Everything is set up. He will even talk about it. He will say things like, there are those who have had their instance of success, but he's tending to describe spiritual awakening as something that within the context of the world is very, 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 very extremely rare. And he says things like, you may wonder how long it will take to reach this state, of perfection, and then he comes back with a question, how long is an instant? Because he's saying it's always available. And so we're going to have some good quotes about that. But the purpose of accepting atonement is to train the mind to come back off the screen of the world and come into the mind and to realize one simple fact, that the mind cannot create beyond itself. The belief that the mind can create beyond itself is miscreation, because the mind cannot create beyond itself. So if you may think, when we think about behaviors, oh, I missed a prompt, or oh, I should have done this, or could have, would have, should have, and all the things around behavior, even around decisions. If you have a life review in your mind and you go, okay, what decisions did I make that were bad decisions, bad decisions, and what decisions did I make that were good decisions? Jesus is still going to pull us back further and say, all the decisions that you think you've made in this world are the same. It's going to blow past morality, it's going to blow past ethics, it's going to blow past concepts, and he's basically going to say, it's all the same because everything that you perceive is all the same. The past and the future are the same, and therefore everything among the images that seem to be part of the past or future, you make two categories, but they're one. It's just one category. And he's going to take us deep, deep, deep into starting to realize that only the mind is causative, and the mind can't create beyond itself, and that's what the atonement or the escape is all about, just coming to that realization. The problem, he says, all sickness comes from level confusion. So we have to really get clear about this level confusion too. What is level confusion? Only the mind is creative. And if you believe that there's something creative, if you believe that the mind can create in the body, or that the body can create in the mind, that's level confusion and that's sickness. So in the end, it's going to be a metaphysical lesson, finally, for the mind about causation. Because if we look at medicine, if we look at physics, if we look at all the disciplines of the world, what's the one thing that in the university, if you look at all the disciplines that are part of education and learning, the one thing that they all have in common is spurious cause-effect relationships, is believing that there's certain things in form that cause other things in form. There's certain things in the past that cause things in the present and therefore the future, and all of that is erroneous. When people talk about health and trying to have a healthy body, if they talk about exercise, that's false cause and effect. That's level confusion. If they talk about diet and nutrition, that's false cause and effect. If they even talk about how many years do I have to study and practice the Course in Miracles before I achieve enlightenment, that's false cause and effect as well, because there is no causation in form. And you can see that that's why when we're going for forgiveness, we're going for a way of looking upon the world completely without judgment. Because once we remove the causation from it, then the conversations between humans suddenly go quiet. And the I need do nothing solution suddenly starts to be like, oh my gosh. So that's why I need do nothing. That I never did do anything, and I never will do anything, and that is an all-encompassing state of mind of I need do nothing. So this movie is good because with other movies, we watch the characters and we watch the character transformation. We've just watched 2 weeks in a row, 2 boys from Scandinavia. We had our Scandinavia boys. We had the remarkable life of Evelyn, and then before that we had Tim Avicii. And we can say, wow, what an expression of openness and healing that came through. And those are symbols of our desire to recognize that mind cannot create beyond itself. All errors simply come from the belief that there's some kind of creation or causation happening in form. Even when we talk about creating a song or creating a painting or whatever, that's still level confusion, because only the mind can create, and that's what is the ultimate realization of the atonement. That's where all the errors are corrected. It also means that the correction only occurs at the level of causation. So the problem of the ego is the belief in separation from God, and that's a belief in the mind, and its correction is where it seemed to arise, in the mind. There is no correction in form. Spike Lee's famous film, Do the Right Thing. There is no do the right thing and do the wrong thing. It's just coming to a place of I was completely wrong about the whole thing. I was completely wrong about the personality I believed I was, wrong about what I think I did right and did wrong. because Jesus says everyone who comes to this world tries to count the good versus the bad in their life. In other words, well, I'm going to have to go before my Creator, and I'm going to have to turn in my resume, and here's the good things, here's the bad things. And Jesus is like saying, the Creator doesn't think that way. The Creator is pure love. The Creator didn't create a being that could make wrong-minded decisions. The Creator doesn't have anything to do with that part. So we'll start, before we start the movie, with something that I mentioned before in the previous weeks from Jesus. Projection makes perception. The world you see is what you gave it, nothing more than that. But though it is no more than that, it is not less. Therefore, to you it is important. So he's saying right there, you believe in the world, and to you it's important. In reality, it's not even happening. You're hallucinating something, it's not even happening. But to you, the hallucination is important. And to you, if the being of light comes in your mind and says, hey, I can help you out, come with me and you'll be free of that hallucination, the mind's, I'm not leaving. No, I'm not going to give up this hallucination, because it's the belief in sacrifice. Like the mind is saying to the Holy Spirit, no, there's parts of the hallucination I like. I don't want to give it all up. And that is the belief in sacrifice. That's to give up what's now the familiar is where the fear of loss comes in. The fear of loss of individuality, the fear of loss of control. He says in the Course, you who cannot even control yourself should hardly aspire to control the universe. What a beautiful line. You who cannot even control yourself should hardly aspire to control the universe. And yet, when we look at grievances, and when we look at our dark times, our upsets, underneath every upset there's a control issue. What is this control issue? And if we break it down into its most basic thing, am I a creation of a perfect God? Am I, as God created me, have I been authored by God, or am I the author of myself? Am I the maker of myself? And this entire perceptual world is just a projection of the belief that I can make myself any way I want to be. That's why we seem to have reincarnation. I can make myself as I want to be, and I'll invent myself in other ways if I damn well want to. You know, it's even coming over tonight, we've our cat Lucy, named after the Lucy movie. Scarlett Johansson had been living with Susanna in her little casita and everything, but then you put her out of the casita, and then she came over to the temple, her palace, and she just stood there waiting for me to come out. She looked at me like, there are many mansions in my father's house, and this is one of them. And she went charging back in. And what it comes down to is, as long as I believe I can create myself, then there will be an authority problem, and that authority problem is what generates all guilt. To believe that I can create myself is what the guilt is. If we're more specific than that, it's the belief that I can create myself, and not only can, but have created myself, and I have a form. I have now taken form. Even though God just creates in spirit, I have taken a form. And that itself is an expression, a projection of the authority issue. And so when the lessons come in, I am not a body, I am free, I am still as God created me. At no single instant does the body exist at all. It is always remembered or anticipated. You can hear the time factor coming in. It is only remembered or anticipated. It's only a problem because of the belief in the past and the future. And once we start to see that there is no difference, imagine that. On your resume, you just put, I only want to see one thing, that the past and the future are identical. That's really a call to wake up. And that's a call not to play out the karmic circle of repeating the same mistake over and over and over again. So in the end, it's very, very deep, but we're here not to forgive something that has happened, but to go into a state of mind where we see that love is all there is and all that there ever has been. Therefore, to you it is important, it is the witness to your state of mind, the outside picture of an inward condition. As a man thinketh, so does he perceive. Therefore, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. Perception is a result, not a cause. There's a beautiful line. That could be a line that you just put it on your, those old alarm clocks that speak, The alarm goes off. Perception is a result, not a cause. When you open those eyes and perceive a ceiling, perception is a result and not a cause. All things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. Without judgment are all things equally acceptable, for who could judge otherwise? It is impossible that anything should come to me unbidden by myself. Even in this world, it is I who rule my destiny. What happens is what I desire. What does not occur is what I do not want to happen. This must I accept. Only a constant purpose can endow events with stable meaning, but it must accord one meaning to them all. A common purpose is the only means whereby perception can be stabilized, and one interpretation given to the world and all experiences here. In this shared purpose is one judgment shared by everyone and everything you see. And then Jesus makes a direct appeal. I do not want you to allow any fear to enter into the thought system toward which I am guiding you. Remind yourself to allow the Holy Spirit to decide for God, for you. As you share my unwillingness to accept error in yourself and others, you must join the great crusade to correct it. Listen to my voice, learn to undo error, and act to correct it. Okay, with that said, here we go, another movie experience, unlike ones that we've ever had before. A good one for just watching your mind. You don't even have to follow the dialogue. There is none. I saw the trailer and I said, there's no dialogue in the trailer. I wonder if the whole movie is like that. And sure enough. So, sit back, relax, buckle in. Because Kansas is going bye-bye. The full awareness of the atonement then is the recognition that the separation never occurred. The ego cannot prevail against this because it is an explicit statement that the ego never occurred. Atonement might be equated with total escape from the past and total lack of interest in the future. Heaven is here. There is nowhere else. Heaven is now. There is no other time. The escape is brought about by your acceptance of the atonement, which enables you to realize that your errors never really occurred. The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. This means you recognize that mind is the only creative level and that its errors are healed by the atonement. Once you accept this, your mind can only heal. The kind of error to which atonement is applied is irrelevant. All healing is essentially the release from fear. To undertake this, you cannot be fearful yourself. You do not understand healing because of your own fear. A major step in the atonement plan is to undo error at all levels. Your mind does make your future, and it will turn it back to full creation at any minute if it accepts the atonement first. It will also return to full creation the instant it has done so. What could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Sickness, or not right-mindedness, is a result of level confusion because it always entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. We have referred to miracles as the means of correcting level confusion, for all mistakes must be corrected at the level on which they occur. Only the mind is capable of error. I'll read that last sentence again. Only the mind is capable of error. Bodies don't make errors. Bodies don't make errors because it's only at the level of the mind where correction can be accepted, and only the mind is capable of error. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. The body cannot create, and the belief that it can, a fundamental error, produces all physical symptoms. Physical illness represents a belief in magic. So we were talking about that recently. Do not raise body thoughts to the level of mind. Whenever you raise body thoughts to the level of mind, remember the level of mind is causation. So if you raise ego body thoughts to the level of mind, you give creative meaning or causation where there is no causation. That shows you how deep it goes into the mind. That's what this healing is really about, is giving causation where there is no causation. And in the end, we have to come to accept that God is the cause, and there is no other. It's letting go of everything that was believed in terms of cause and effect, in terms of this world. You watch an election where a country elects a person as a president, and then there's all these opinions about what the president's doing or not doing, or should do or shouldn't do, and how it's going to affect all these people. How will it affect the citizens? How will it affect the immigrants, the illegal immigrants? What impact will it have on the economy? What impact will it have on the daily lives of people, the economics, the health and well-being of the people? And Jesus is trying to get us to see that's not the level where the problem is. It's the mind. believing that your mind can create beyond itself or create in form. When we look at reproduction in terms of human procreation, that's level confusion, the belief that bodies can come together and create a body. Jesus is like, that's a good one. Where did you come up with that one? It's starting to realize that only the mind is creative and only the mind is causative, because if you can come to that humble recognition, then Jesus is saying you can accept the correction. But you can only accept the correction if you come to that humble sense of, I've been wrong about everything in form, not just some things, but absolutely everything, because there was an attempt to give causation to what has no causation. It's like the world is a world of unreal effects. The whole cosmos is a cosmos of unreal effects that come from an unreal cause, the ego. And when the mind tries to assign causation to it, it's saying that the ego is a real cause. And if the ego is a real cause, then guess what's real? Fear is real. If the ego is a real cause, then guilt is real. Then shame is real. Then lack is real, if the ego is a real cause. But if God is the only cause, then there's only an experience of joy. So you see how the humbleness comes in. So we can see in the movie, it's just fun to watch. Now the cat has been picked up and dropped, and I think we can relate to this movie. How many times have we said, "What have I done?" and now dropped. I remember with our community years ago, Lila was the first person in our community to pass away. And I think Lila's favorite saying, always when I would talk to her, she said, "Spirit is never going to drop me on my head." She said that over and over. Spirit, it was her way of saying, I trust. No matter what, I trust. Spirit's never going to drop me on my head. So, okay, here we go. Back to the adventure, the wordless adventure. Back to our lesson in causation. The whole distortion that made magic rests on the belief that there is a creative ability in matter which the mind cannot control. This error takes two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body, or that the body can miscreate in the mind. So those two forms could be summarized by the medical model and the psychiatric model. But whenever the body's involved in ideas of creation, it's miscreation. This error can take two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body. And that's, when you look at people like Louise Hay and, a lot of her books, You Can Heal Your Life, that's still the belief that the mind can miscreate in the body. And then the flip is that the body can miscreate in the mind. That things can happen to the body or to the cells of the body that torture the mind. When somebody says, you're giving me a headache, or projecting it onto a person, or I was in the sun too long, I have a headache. It's as if the body can miscreate in the mind. It's as if pain can come about from something in form, something happening in form. But remember, the whole teaching is that nothing is happening. It's not about correcting what's happening with something to happen better, which is the whole human condition, trying to make a better dream, trying to have a better worldly life, better conditions. Jesus is saying, no, that's not the direction. When it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create beyond itself, neither type of confusion need occur. So you can see from this, it's again pointing to one realization in the mind, that only the mind is causative and only the mind can create, and the mind cannot create beyond itself. That in heaven, Christ is an idea in the mind of God. God created Christ, and Christ has creations, but they're all at the level of divine mind. And creation is purely spiritual. So in this world, we've said apples come from apple trees, pears come from pear trees, babies come from what the world calls procreation. There's a cause and effect relationship that's projected onto form, and it's really just creation, creative ability being projected to form or to the body. This error can take two forms. It can believe that the mind can miscreate in the body, or that the body can miscreate in the mind. When it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create beyond itself, neither type of confusion need occur. Readiness is only the beginning of confidence. You may think this implies that an enormous amount of time is necessary between readiness and mastery. But let me remind you that time and space are under my control. Salvation cannot be the only purpose you hold while you still cherish others. That's an important sentence. Salvation cannot be the only purpose you hold while you still cherish others. In other words, if only the mind's creative, only the mind's causative, it can't be the only purpose you hold while you still cherish others. While you still believe the mind can miscreate in the body, or the body can miscreate in the mind, it will set up all kinds of goals. And that's what this world is known for. It seems natural that human beings have goals and ambitions. But it's all part of a distortion, a miscreation, a misuse of creative ability by thinking that somehow mind can create beyond itself. One of the most popular things in spirituality, it goes back decades, but the book The Secret and the movie The Secret was all about manifestation. I remember at the time saying, well, ultimately, the whole point is, the joy comes in is seeing that you don't have the power to manifest. That's the greatest joy. It's not the belief that you can use the power of the mind to manifest in form, because that's miscreation. And again, that's the error. That's not the solution. There's even now, it's popular to jump timelines. I was talking about that recently, where you can jump timelines and gain skills from jumping timelines, so you try to gain more skills. But for what? It's still, I talked about that on that Miracles Cafe with the Keeney Wild, it's still a distraction. Even timeline jumping, instead of doing reincarnation in a linear way, just jumping between timelines, because they're all simultaneous anyway. There seems to be a thrill. It's thrill-seeking. It's ego thrill-seeking to jump between timelines. And what Jesus is saying is, no, that's still the problem. That is not the solution. The error is in the mind, and it's only corrected through atonement. And atonement is a realization that the separation never happened, and that only the mind is causative, and then there is no cause other than the mind. When the mind believes in the ego, that's trying to hold on to a false belief. And that's what miscreation is. It's trying to use the mind's creative ability to make up something called belief. In heaven there are no beliefs. It's just isness, it's just oneness. Eternal life, spirit. But when the mind believes in the ego, then a solution had to be brought about in which there could be a correction or a replacement for the belief, and that's That's the atonement. But that's what forgiveness is. It's complete forgiveness is the atonement. So you can see it's a whole different context than trying to improve something in form, because when you try to improve something in form, whether it's a personality or it's an outcome or it's a set of outcomes, we have a whole section in bookstores and the library called self-help. But the self that God created needs no help. It just is. It needs acceptance. It just doesn't need help, because it was created perfect, and what is perfect doesn't need help. But it does require acceptance. So when he says salvation cannot be the only purpose you hold while you still cherish others, the full acceptance of salvation as your only function necessarily entails two phases. One, the recognition of salvation as your function, and the relinquishment of all the other goals you have invented for yourself. This is the only way in which you can take your rightful place among the saviors of the world. There's less workbook lessons. Salvation of the world depends on me. That's a workbook lesson. It's talking about the mind, accepting salvation as the only function, not as a person, but in the mind, and the relinquishment of all other goals you have invented for yourself. So I'll start with just a couple flow quotes, because we're watching the movie Flow. And this is talking about the flow in the mind, not the flow of events and the flow of images and circumstances. He's talking about the ego. The gap is then so small that knowledge can easily flow across it and obliterate it forever. You have very little trust in me as yet, but it will increase as you turn more and more often to me instead of to your ego for guidance. The results will convince you increasingly that this choice is the only sane one you can make. No one who learns from experience that one choice brings peace and joy, while another brings chaos and disaster, needs additional convincing. I have spoken before of the higher or true perception, which is so near to truth that God himself can flow across the little gap. Knowledge is always ready to flow everywhere, but it cannot oppose. So what's so beautiful I like about the movie that we're watching is you can see that the director has made a movie here, but he's put no kind of antagonist in the movie. He's not like singling out a specific enemy. It's just we can see the fears arising in some of the characters, in their expressions and so forth, but it's very much like a symbol of the spiritual journey where the fear just seems to arise. And then the ego assigns causes in the world to the fear. And you can see some of the characters like the dog and the different ones where they come, and then the dog's friendly, and then let's play ball, or let's play, and then if there's no play, there's other goals in mind. Even to play can be a worldly goal, or to want someone to play with, or whatever. That can be a very frustrating thing if you identify with one who wants to play and you can't find playmates. But ultimately, I think the director too is showing us, like with the cats generally are pretty independent, solitary creatures. And in this movie, you know how Jesus says in the Course, you will not go on alone from here. Mighty companions go with you. kind of showing in this movie that there is some kind of surrender required for the integration of perception. For it's not really about specifics, but it's about allowing cooperation, collaboration, and miraculous joining to unify perception. So there's on a broader basis. I mean, here they go, they're going through all their little like interpersonal things as animals, and then suddenly whoosh, this giant whale shark comes into the scene every once in a while. It's so big, it's giant. It's like saying, no, there's still a bigger goal here. Don't get caught up in the small stuff, in judging the small stuff. There's a bigger goal. It's a unification of perception. And then Jesus is telling us right in the Course, he's saying, yeah, the unification will not be complete until you come all the way back into your mind and realize that only your mind can create, and it can't create beyond itself. That's what heaven is. Mind, divine mind, just creating and extending, not involving increase, because increase is still quantitative. Whenever we think of increase, it's some kind of a quantitative expansion. But heaven is like a qualitative expansion that does not involve increase. It's just an extension of love that keeps extending and extending. God is ever extending, forever and ever and ever. And then the creations of God, the Christ, is ever extending, forever and ever and ever. And then the creations of the Christ are forever extending, forever and ever and ever. It's something that there's no reference point in this world. You know, you can't. Jesus says that heaven and light are abstract. Okay, what does that mean? There is no reference in a world of specifics for divine abstraction. It's just, there's no examples. You know, like when people say, does God really exist? An atheist will say, give me an example. Show me the proof, you know. But a world of specifics that was made by the ego as a veil to keep you from knowing the truth is not going to have the examples or the proof, because it was made that the truth would never be known. So you can't really look through the five senses to find it, because it's not there. But to go into prayer, to just say, I want to, I mean, ultimately that's what Francis's movie about Take Me Home was about. It wasn't about a home in a time-space sense. It was like that home feeling inside, that deep love and connection, that divinity. Take me home. Help me remember the divinity that's there. So I love how this movie, it's like, you know, it's, you can go along and chuckle and float with it, but it's like, there are a lot of parallels to earthly perception going on with these animals. Even without words, you know, you can just watch your emotions as you see things. And whatever meaning that we're seeing in the movie is again what the director's saying. The fear is within. We have to confront the fear within. What seems to be out of pattern, what seems to be new or not familiar, oftentimes seems to have fear associated with it. And then Jesus is saying, yeah, okay, good, allow that to come up and stay with me. Follow my guidance so we can transcend it. The world is basically saying you need to protect the body and do things to protect the body. But that's just reinforcing the belief in miscreation. It's like trying to use magic to find the solution when magic is made by the ego to defend against the solution. That's very deep. Okay, here we go. Got our whale shark appearing again. So even when we see now the cat going out and catching the fish, you know, it can be in the human experience like there's a sense of a good feeling inside, like I can provide for myself instead of being at the mercy. I can get money or make money or find food for myself, even if it's getting back into prehistoric days. But again, Jesus is just using it to say, this is still false causation. It's still, this is believing you can do something in form with the body to put your mind at ease. In this case, the cat goes fishing. Down there, swims, gets the fish, brings them back, and has a pile of fish, licks the fish with a little bit of satisfaction. But I found that in the early years of my work with the Course and then traveling, that the most valuable thing that I was experiencing was the undoing of this belief in causation. I mean, in this world, lack is assumed to be part of the human condition, and that people are lacking. People need food and shelter, warmth. They need certain basic needs, like on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic needs. But all of that arises from the ego, which is the belief in lack. It's, if God is purely spirit, and what spirit is just an abundant state of being that just is. There is no lack in eternal life. So the belief in the ego is the belief in lack. But then when it's projected out to human beings, there can be this false satisfaction of seeming to provide for oneself. And it's like, it's still the miscreation, whether it seems like you feel helpless and dependent on other people or on the system or on the things of this world like money or time or skills and abilities, jobs, employment, careers, all those things are part of the miscreation. And or whether you feel independent, that you feel a sense of accomplishment and success, and by using the body to get money or get resources or get skills and abilities, then there's a sense of satisfaction. I was watching they were having the presidential inauguration in the United States, and I was like looking at the Mark Zuckerberg, Bezos, who was there. It was all the billionaires. The billionaires were lined up. And it's interesting now with talks of deportation, of tariffs, of things that are huge, seemingly in the world, emotional things where people don't have the basics, or inflation, all these things. But there was dressed up in suits, there was a line of billionaires, as if like there's something successful about earning and accumulating vast amounts of money, while other people seem to starve. But it's all just down to one thing, and Jesus is saying it's just the belief that you can miscreate. It's just the belief that you can take the creative ability that God gave you in heaven, in eternity, and then believe you can use it in a way to make up some kind of an identity and form. It's not about what seems to be happening specifically in the dream, because Jesus is teaching us, you're either dreaming or you're awake. That's a distinction there. He's saying, wake is good. Dreaming, you can do better. You can do better. It's like putting your focus on the letting go of the ego by seeing that everything in the projected world is a projection of the ego, equally. He's just basically saying in the workbook, he says, salvation is a thought that you have in your mind right now. And then he says, find it. Find it. He's saying, it's there. It's there. It's the correction. The correction has already happened. Find it. Don't seek for anything else but this correction. So the question is never really the thing that oftentimes is in the human condition. What should I do today? But the question is really the purpose. What is the purpose? And Jesus is saying very clearly the purpose is forgiveness, release. Release all attempts at self-improvement. Release all attempts at trying to change the world. Release all attempts at trying to make the world a better place. Release all attempts at trying to fix the situations, the people, the places, the circumstances. That's really what he's encouraging us. He's saying, in the I need do nothing section, he says, if you want to really show your allegiance to me, your allegiance, your loyalty, just say and mean this one thing. I need do nothing. It's the exact opposite of all the conditioning. It's the exact opposite of, I'm going to make things better. Make things better. And Jesus is teaching us with the Holy Spirit, everything is perfect, but you have to accept the perfection. Those were some of the quotes I was finding that I talked about earlier. What could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? I was on Facebook, I think about a week or two, and somebody put that quote, and they go, what about hurricanes? What about fires? What about wars? What about world wars? What could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? Everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. It's like the only way that the world can be escaped is by seeing the image of a forgiven world, a forgiven cosmos, and that's just seeing it in a holistic way, seeing it all as the same. And the ego doesn't want to be discovered, it doesn't want to be exposed, it doesn't want to be exposed as nothing, exposed as non-existent, but the trick is making the hierarchy of illusions or trying to make order of difficulty in miracles, and that's why Jesus was such a demonstration that it didn't matter what the circumstances or the situation was. There was never a case of, oh, Jesus come, but this one is really sick, it's really bad. This is a real tough one, because with Lazarus, he was really, really, really sick. How sick was he? He was dead and smelling in the crypt. That's by the world's definition, that's really sick. Dead and gone for days. That's pretty sick. And yet, Lazarus, come forth. Oh my, if that's possible, then maybe all of perception is a trick. Maybe the entire perception of the cosmos is a trick. If that breaks the laws, and that one, that was kind of breaking the laws of the universe, that was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Dead and gone is supposed to be dead and gone, and then it wasn't dead and gone. It was like showing that there's a trick going on. That was probably one of the most extreme examples. And then Jesus was a return encore, crucifixion, and then Mary Magdalene in the garden. I have seen him. And the apostles were like, what? Oh, crazy woman. Crazy woman. Oh my God. I've seen him. What? You see, because again, that is again showing the trick. Because dead should mean dead and gone according to the laws of the world and death. Bodies are born, bodies die, but bodies don't come back. Thomas, Jesus saying, having Thomas come over and put his finger down in the hole in the arm. That was another demonstration. Like, not what you thought, right? Not what you thought. So that's what's good about this movie is you can just watch your mind as these little stories and scenarios play. But underneath it all, the big whale symbol is kind of like there, showing that there's something giant that's much bigger than all of the characters, that is kind of like a symbol of something transcendent. Whenever we have something that's much, much bigger than what we can comprehend or what we're used to, that's just a beautiful symbol of, I think, of transcendence in this movie for sure. And we'll close here with 4 quotes from Jesus using the word flow as our benediction. Truth comes of its own will unto its own. When you have learned that you belong to truth, it will flow lightly over you without a difference of any kind. Peace will be yours because His peace still flows to you from Him whose will is peace. You have it now. The Holy Spirit will teach you how to use it, and by extending it, to learn that it is in you. God willed you heaven, and will always will you nothing else. Yet the peace that already lies deep within must first expand and flow across the obstacles you placed before it. And finally, from your holy relationship, truth proclaims the truth, and love looks on itself. Salvation flows from deep within the home you offered to my Father and to me. And we are there together in the quiet communion in which the Father and the Son are joined. O come, ye faithful, to the holy union of the Father and the Son in you. Yeah, it's so deep and reverent. That's our flow. That's what we welcome in the end. Truth. Truth flows when we welcome it. Yeah. I saw a quote in the Course, I think in the last 2 or 3 days, where he was saying, forgive the dreamer. Forgive the dreamer for what you made. That's getting down to the real forgiveness. Forgive the dreamer for making it a dream. It's kind of what we were reading tonight. Forgive the dreamer for the belief in miscreation. That's really going into the forgiveness. And that line in there, of course, the dreams you think you like can hold you back as much as where the fear is apparent. Wow. The dreams you think you like. Wow, that's deep. Jesus is like, he's like helping us. I remember I used to hear it, feel it deeply with all these songs. It was Cliff Richard's song, "The only way out is the only way in, and it's you." I spend a lot of time at the crossroads, getting that lonely feeling inside. But suddenly you made the rescue. You pulled me through. Now let me do something for you. Let's get this thing going. Let's move it along. Let me do all the things I've been missing so long. 'Cause the only way out is the only way in, and it's you. You know, it's a beautiful, I would hear these songs. What's that? That feels really good. But it's the music, like, just calling us. Somebody told me they were doing a music experiment where they took 2 vials of blood, and on one they put them in some kind of a electromagnetic protective thing so it wouldn't have any stimuli. And then they put another vial of blood with next to a speaker, and they just played music onto the vial of blood. And they said, actually, the dead blood cells in the vial of blood came back to life from the music, just from putting a speaker by them and playing music. It's just all symbols, like it's all a higher communication beyond what we can seem to perceive. That it's just like a tractor beam of love, like we watched that Avicii movie, It was so clear how he was just able to tune in and channel, and then, he said, I can't play guitar, but he just used this computer and music software to go tap into the vibe, and come up with these great songs and music. Yeah. It's fantastic. We had our little meeting at the Palace of Innocence too before Lauren and Sam were leaving. It was all these sharings of all these miraculous parables, and the whole point behind all the parables was, you just have to flow with your intuitive feelings and lay aside preconceptions of how anything should look, because it's just the concepts that block the light, just of thinking some kind of a subtle comparison, what I should be doing or what I ought to be doing or how it should look. Those are the concepts that block the joy of thinking that how would I know what the best form is? How could I ever know what the best form is? How could I make any evaluation? The Beyond All Idols section in the Course, Jesus says, when you decide upon the form of what you want, you lose the understanding of its purpose. When you decide upon the form of what you want, you lose the understanding of its purpose. So he's just saying, trust me, give it over to me, Holy Spirit, decide for God for me. That's the greatest prayer. Just, I do not know, show me, lead me, show me. And it's so beautiful that it's like it takes us away. It's like the Serenity Prayer. It takes us away from thinking we know what's most helpful, but being willing, having the prayer in our heart to be shown. Because in the end, as we're reading tonight, it's not about this or that. It's something that transcends the this or that. That's not the direction to try to figure out the form. But the purpose, yes, that we can choose. Then everything else is irrelevant. Like St. Augustine said, love and do what you will. You achieve the faintest glimmering of what love means today. You advance in distance beyond measure and in time beyond the count of years. Like that, I'm just sensing that feeling of inclusion. That's what we're being called to, is just to include everything in our perception, because it's all in our mind. There is no out there. So it's just like, he said in the Bible, take the stranger in. There is no stranger. It's all inclusive. Wow. Yeah, there was a course teacher, some of you heard Tara Singh, who said one time, what if silence is the most productive state? Let's Rupio undead. The silence is the most productive state. Takes our mind out of the rat race. Yeah. So neat. At the end of this movie, the whole gang of them were all just staring into the water in stillness. Just like, that was a nice message at the end too. Thank you. That was fun.